Australia's usually thriving backpacker industry is dwindling thanks to the pandemic. There are calls now for any remaining working backpackers to be given an extension on their visas. Joining us live now is Simon Westaway. He's the Director of the Australian Tourism Industry Council. Simon, appreciate your time. Are there actually many backpackers still left here in Australia? I assume most of them would have left at the start of the crisis.
Oh, good afternoon. Yes, it's a really interesting question. So we estimate there's around 70,000 backpackers on working holiday visa arrangements still in country. That sounds like a big number, but as you alluded to in your introduction, it is dwindling. It's about half what the normal number would be. We'd normally have at least 150,000 backpackers in country at any particular time of year on average, and so we're now obviously well below that. We're losing them at around 10,000 a month in terms of run rate. So the mathematics isn't looking too fantastic here. And as we turn into 2021, we're only going to have around about somewhere between 20 and 30,000 backpackers left, unless there's some sort of a remedial instrument or some ability to try to sort of put a spike in the system and, importantly, give backpackers an opportunity to stay here longer and give students a chance to stay here longer and to support the tourism industry as well as other associated industries, particularly in our regions.
So from your discussions with the government, does it look likely that they will heed those calls for the backpackers to get a 12-month visa extension? And I see that you've floated this idea of a fast-tracked pilot program to bring back some international visitors like backpackers. Explain for us how that could work.
Yeah, look, it's a twofold approach. So, look, I think we are starting to get some real gravity on this issue, and really a call out to those youth advocates or those parts of industry that work around the backpacker sector in the youth market. We've collaborated really well over recent times. There's an interim report being released with respect to the working holiday maker inquiry, which has been underway. It's going to be undertaking more hearings, and so an interim report's not a final report, and it's obviously not regulation or legislation, but at least it's a step forward, and that in summary is finding that they're calling for extension for the program for existing visa holders in Australia, which is fantastic. In terms of the backpackers coming into country, so we have some complexity here, obviously, with the existing travel bans and only a limit of 4,000 Australians that can come in each week in terms of the cap. I mean, we're obviously working on that as well. I think it's important that we can find a way of lifting that cap, both symbolically and also importantly, opens up the opportunity ultimately for backpackers to come back in the market. And we think backpackers are actually really an easy option and probably the best first-term option to get people back into Australia, because they will be prepared to self-quarantine. They do want to stay a period of time here, up to 3 years. So that's, we think, is a pilot really worth getting behind.
Simon, you're probably closer to the policy debate than most when it comes to those international borders. What's your best guess as to where we're at in terms of when we'll actually see that international hard border be lifted?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. Well, the international border is a very tough one. I mean, the incidence of COVID is dropping globally in terms of the results that are coming through. So that's encouraging. I mean, I think we all, if you take the lead from Qantas, they don't see international operations kicking off until the second half of 2021. We've got this crazy situation where Qatar Airlines is the biggest international operator at the moment into and out of the country, albeit obviously with very limited amount of flights and caps on their seats to meet those, the inbound requirements at the moment. I think we've got to be hopeful that, between March and June next year that we can see the international border lifted. Obviously, we'd like to see it open before that. The opportunity for travel bubbles, particularly on that Trans-Tasman route, possibly the Pacific Islands and, importantly into Asia, we can see opportunities there. We've got some elections coming up, particularly in New Zealand. Once we get through that New Zealand poll, I think the industry really does have to have another red hot go with government to try to see if we can crack open that bubble and get the Trans-Tasman market moving. It is a 3 to 3.2 million a year travel market just with Kiwis and Australians moving between both countries. So that's a really good place to start. But, ideally, we want to see this happening sooner rather than later, but obviously it has to be done in a safe way.